This is an instructional video for removing the ASQII pump and rebuilding it. The first step is to disconnect the electrical. You can see the plug there that disconnects from the wire harness. Remove that. And then on the right hand side there's a brass fitting that the drain line comes through. Take that out. Once that's completed, then inside of the tank itself, remove the spray arm and then the scrap screen. At this point, the pump is exposed and you can remove the screws that hold it down in place in the tank. Then lift the pump out and place it on a bench to work on. Once the pump is out, before you take anything apart, mark the castings so that you can put them back together in the same orientation. Take the retaining screws out that hold the pump together. After all of the screws are removed, then you will separate the diffuser and suction plate from the base pump. The centrifugal impeller will be exposed now, and this is where you take the screw out that holds that impeller in place. Sure to keep track of the washer, the screw that holds that together. Now the suction plate can be removed from the base of the pump. You will see a drain inlet port has one screw that holds it in place. Remove that screw and take the inlet off of the pump. This exposes the axial impeller, sometimes called a propeller. This is for the drain. I'm going to remove that from the motor shaft now. Be aware of the spacers, the stainless spacer washers that are on the impeller shaft, or on the motor shaft itself. You can prepare to remove the pump from the motor itself. These screws are 1024 by 5/8 long hex bolts. There are 4 of them. There. Now the pump is disassembled and you can prepare to remove the old seal and put the new seal in. Take the pump base and turn it over. Using a dowel, drive the old seal out. Be sure to clean out any residue silicone sealer that may be in there. Now prepare to put the new seal in place. This is the graphite part of the seal. It goes into the pump base first, presses into the open hole there. Put a thin coating of sealer around the base before putting it into the pump. And then with the seal installing tool, tap the seal into place firmly. Wipe off any sealer that has come out around it. Be sure that none gets on the face of the graphite. This shows the ceramic portion of the seal as it's pressed into the axial impeller. We'll pry the old seal out and then put the new ceramic portion in. Put some soap lube on the rubber boot of the seal before putting it into the impeller. And then using the seal installer, tap it into place. Make sure that it's even all around. Now as we put the pump base back on the motor, there's a right way and a wrong way. We want to align the base on the motor so that the drain line will be on the correct side. With the pump motor sitting on the table, make sure that the wire coming off of the motor is facing towards you. The alignment for the drain line should be at the rear of the pump. Alright, we're going to set the pump base on the motor now. You'll see inside of the pump cavity there is a machine hole coming off of one side that wants to be away from you as you put it onto the motor. In other words, 180 degrees from the electrical wires. Insert the screws to hold it to the base. Be sure to put all the screws in before you tighten any one of them up. A nut driver is much easier to use than a screwdriver. So the correct orientation for your pump once it's installed on the motor, you'll see that the drain port is coming right off of the back of the motor, back of the pump as you're facing it. And the wires, electrical wires, are in the front where you'll be putting it into the machine. With the pump assembled to the motor, and now the motor shaft is sticking through the seal. At this point we're going to put on spacer washers. They go onto the motor shaft. These set up the end plate for the pump so you have the right clearance. The washers that came with your pump are the ones that will fit the pump housing that you're using. Now we take the axial impeller and we're going to put this over the motor shaft, and it will ride on the spacer washers that you put in there. You'll see that the shaft has a D cut on it. This goes through the impeller, holds it in place. So at this point, now we are going to put an O-ring. It goes on the top of the impeller. Next is going to be the drain port. Put that in place. And there's a retaining screw to hold it down. Next comes the suction plate. There is an aligning hole on this plate. Okay, now by using the lines that we had marked on the pump before we took it apart, we can line that up so the pump holes will be in the correct place. We leave that loose without putting the screws in as we put on the centrifugal impeller next. Before putting the centrifugal impeller on, we put in the sealing O-ring. Goes in the inside of the impeller like that. Then this goes on top of the motor shaft. There is a washer. It's a thick washer, and it goes on top of that. And then there is a holding screw that also has an O-ring at the base of the screw. This goes in, and we tighten it in first before we tighten up the suction plate. We line our suction plate back up, and we put the diffuser over the top of it with the aligning marks together, and we put the screws in to hold that in place. We're going to put 4 screws in and tighten them down. At this point, we'll see if we have good clearance for the pump, or if we have to change some shims. Now that the pump is assembled, we're ready to put it back in the machine. Do not put the drain fitting into the pump now, but we'll put that in the machine once everything is in place. Now, because you marked everything with aligning marks, now you can place the pump back in the correct position, so it will line up with the electrical and the drain lines. We use a light coating of silicone on the gasket. This helps in the sealing. If you use too much silicone, then the gasket will squeeze out as you tighten it down. This is the removal, repair, and exchange of a motor and reassembly of the ASQII water pump. The screw that's used for both the pump and the center of the impeller is part number 98-1316. This is a special screw that has a locking tab and a rubber O-ring at the head of the screw. This is used in the 8 screws that go around that fasten the pump. to the tank, and the center screw for the top impeller. Whenever the pump motor is replaced, the motor relay should also be replaced. They are sympathetic, the motor and the relay, and if there is a fault or failure in one, the other will also be damaged. So these are always replaced together.